How are you feeling?
I get asked that a lot, and it's always very hard to answer because sometimes I feel like an invalid, like a newborn, and very fragile. And other times I feel like I could fly and I want to embrace everything, and I enjoy everything so intensely and savour it.
Talk me through sentencing. This kept getting kicked back of 3 months, yeah?
Yeah.
And then you were in court. What happened?
When the embassy guys told me the sentencing will be next week, my exact words were, "About bloody time." Handcuffed, shackled, feet shackled, into the court van, get to the court. So this was 7 a.m, so a boring wait until the 9:30 sentencing time, during which time I had to go to the toilet. And I'm, led down the corridor to go to a normal toilet, a sit-down toilet. And that was the first time I had sat on a toilet in over 3 years.
Wow.
And I relished the experience. I come out, there's a mirror. Again, the first time in over 3 years. With all the white hairs, I have just dyed my hair, by the way. And the dark eye pouches, I hadn't slept the night before, and wrinkles and whatnot. And looking really pale and frail, I felt.
So you get to the airport. Who's the first person you see? Is it Penny Wong or is it your kids?
It's my kids running at me, and my mum, who has aged a lot in the past 3 years. And we just all screamed, and my mum wept, and I just held on to her, and I could see that she had lost a lot of weight because of diabetes and having broken her ribs.
Yeah.
And just having to shoulder the burden mentally and physically, and just be strong for me all that time. My heart broke.
Okay, so you get to Melbourne.
Yeah.
What's the first meal you went out for in Melbourne?
Vietnamese.
Yeah?
Because my mum lives in a very Asian neighbourhood.
Yeah.
And we just walked to this little place and had pho, had chicken feet.
Wow. Chicken feet?
Well, they had Chinese food as well. Cantonese
that
food
would
as
not
well.
have been on my list for first meals.
Well, it was more because my kids and my mum as well. But then the next day, I gorged myself at the Vic Market, the temple of good eating.
Yeah.
And had bratwurst, had borek, then hot chocolate to wash it down, bought Moreton Bay bugs, Sydney rock oysters, and what else? What didn't I buy?
Lei only heard snippets of the campaign being waged on her behalf in Australia.
We're all dealing with the coronavirus crisis at the time. Her kids were bound in Melbourne and stuck and couldn't get them back.
Now that you ask, I remember, you asked what was the first meal you had.
Yeah.
More importantly, what was the first alcoholic drink you had?
Actually, very true. What was it?
It was Brown Brothers Patricia Champagne, and it was fantastic.
Oh, I love that. We will get you another bottle.
And I didn't get emo drunk at all.
That's impressive.
Slightly.
This is the question everyone wants to know.
Sure.
What were you actually accused of? And if I'll read out to you what was released by the Ministry of State Security after your sentencing.
Yep.
They said you were charged with illegally providing China state security secrets abroad, and that you illegally provided China state secrets that you had known at work through your mobile phone, and you were found to have been co-opted by an overseas institution. What did you do?
Well, you and I are both, I was in the business of telling people things. So you can imagine how much I have wanted to tell my story, because I know this is what everyone is curious about. But I'm also conscious of the fact, or I'm given to understand, that I can't really divulge details or specifics.
Okay.
And every country I guess different countries have different systems. One does what one has to do in that sort of situation, and my focus was getting home to my family in one piece.
I think I know, because we spoke yesterday.
Yes.
We kind of debriefed about your situation and what happened. I think that what you did was just a really minor thing, and you spent 3 years in a situation where you're deprived of information and you've been told that you did something wrong, and you kind of internalized that a little. Like, this is my opinion, and I worry that you actually hold guilt around something that you've done, which was incredibly basic. So they've said you shared a document. I mean, we're talking about a government briefing before you went on air, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and essentially you broke an embargo.
Yes.
By a few minutes.
Yes.
And that's the accusation against you.
Yes.
I mean, when I heard that, I gasped, because I've done that. I don't think there's a journalist alive who hasn't done that. Embargoes barely work in Australia because no one ever adheres to them, but it's a pretty normal part of media briefings. Do you actually feel like you did something wrong?
Well, the aim of RSDL and all the subsequent talks and writing self-assessments, I think, is to drive home that point, that in China that is a big sin.
Yeah.
That you have hurt the motherland, and that state's authority has been eroded because of you. And I mean, what seems innocuous to us here is, and I mean, I'm sure it's not limited to embargoes, but many other things are not in China. Especially, I'm given to understand that the gambit of state security is widening.
Yeah. So were you arrested? Did they just come in the night to your apartment? Was that how it happened?
No. They had people from my work, someone very senior, call me and say, "You're wanted here for a very important meeting about your new ambassador series."
Wow.
Yeah.
You work.
So
wow.
I went in thinking about work.
Yeah.
And I get to this big meeting room, and about 20 people there.
Yeah.
And then someone stands up, shows his badge, and says, "You're wanted for." And immediately they take my belongings away, and then I'm led to, or escorted to my apartment, where they'd already arranged with the security at my compound to go through the garage up to my apartment, where they looked for evidence all day.
Yeah. So when did you realise you were really in serious trouble?
They tried to give me hints at the apartment as we were leaving. They said, "Turn off the power and water, take some clothes, and take some toiletries." And I said, "Oh, it'll be right. I've left my apartment for a few weeks and no problems."
Yeah. Oh boy.
And they said, "You sure you don't want something to eat?" So I made myself a homemade bread toasted sandwich with cheese and avocado. And those three things I ended up not having for over 3 years.
Oh wow. And you had no idea that was your last free meal?
No. Or if I'd known, I would have had more.
Lei would go from her job as a global news anchor to 6 months of what's called residential detention.
It's to make you feel isolated and bored and pained and desperate. My experience was the first 5 months I got to read books, and I had a pen and paper with which to write, and that was much less painful than the final month of just 12 hours a day of pure sitting and very little chance to get up and just walk, just pace around a very little room.
Because you weren't allowed outside in that time at all.
No way.
So 5 months without seeing...
6 months in total.
6 months.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they say that they gave me 15 minutes of fresh air, but all it meant was there's a window up the top that the guard would open for 15 minutes, but the curtains are still drawn while the windows are open. And I certainly didn't feel that was fresh air.
Yeah.
And you never saw anything except the blue curtains and the mottled carpet and the beige padded walls.
And it was just silence.
Silence, yeah.
What were the nightmares? Can you describe them for me?
Every dream was a nightmare, because waking up, if it was a good dream, waking up was worse. And if it was a bad dream, then obviously you were frightened. So I had recurring dreams about my children with me on the bus, who were still little, and there was no car seat, and I couldn't help them when there was an accident. I had dreams about trying to reach Nick on the phone, and the phone would be taken away, or I would scroll and I couldn't find his name, or I'd ring and he wouldn't be there. Or I'd dream that I was outside and waking up to see the guards' faces was the worst. So when you were either trying to sleep and trying to block all those thoughts that you didn't want to go near in your head, and then when you slept, it was worse. Yeah. So I would translate poems in my head, or try to think of questions to ask. Why do things work a certain way? I would try to have internal conversations with Nick. What would Nick say? How would he make this into a joke?
Yeah.
I even made up a radio station called Coffin FM. That's what it felt like. We were buried alive, and I would be sending or pretending to be different people and sending each other love song dedications. Yeah, I listened to a lot of I used to listen to a lot of radio. Yeah. And I still miss it very much.
Yeah. Well, you got it back now.
Yeah. And one of the first songs I heard in the car on the radio was Boys of Summer. Yeah. And I told Nick, if there was a nuclear holocaust, there'd still be some Australian radio station playing Boys of Summer. And
that is a fact, yeah.
Yeah.
After residential detention, she was transferred to a separate facility where she'd have cellmates.
They never turned the lights off?
No, neither in the detention centre. So it was, and even at the halfway house, the lights were on.
You're joking?
No.
Wasn't the halfway? Oh, sorry, yeah.
So on the plane was the first time I'd experienced darkness at night.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And of course now here, in a normal bed, in a normal house, I can turn the lights off. Bliss.
Wow. And you were teaching yourself languages in there?
Yes, because I'd done German in high school, and I improved my Cantonese with my cellmate. I also tried to learn by myself Italian and Spanish and a wee bit of Japanese. I built up a stash of over 200 books, and I used to think, wow, this is a book that Nick has lovingly chosen for me and has held in his hand, and I would just caress the book and keep it close to me, and when I could, I would put it under my pillow because it was so comforting. And when there were wise words or encouraging words, I would feel that he had written them, along with very corny song lyrics. I would pretend that he was singing them to me. Maybe not Celine Dion.
Wasn't it Celine Dion? What was the Celine Dion story you were telling me about the song?
Yeah. There's a song, Because You Loved Me. Yeah. And in it there are two lines that get me every time. One is, for all the wrongs that you made right. And another one is, just makes me think about everyone who's helped me, is you were my voice when I couldn't speak, because no one has a voice. and or your voice is quashed. So
how did you feel about how the Australian government was handling the case? Did you notice when there was a change in government how your situation was handled?
I certainly felt there was more engagement, and even at the consular visits, noticeable increase in energy, and just the amount of things that were being done, and I just can't begin to thank them. DFAT and the PM and the media and just ordinary people with heart.
And Penny Wong.
She's amazing. I'd met her in 2014 at a dinner, and she was really impressive. So I passed on a message to her because I heard about the tweets that she was sending and all the heartfelt messages, and contacting my family and reassuring them. And she actually wrote me a personal message back, and it wasn't just poly speak or, you know, standard stock phrases. I really felt that she was a friend who was trying to help me, trying to look out for my best interests.
Now Lei has fresh air and freedom, but adjusting back to normal life won't be without its own challenges.
Because of this whole ordeal, I keep expecting, you know, people to drop out of the sky and arrest me. And maybe it's something I need to get over, that it doesn't happen here.
It's going to take some time.
Or, you know, something will happen to my children, or something of mine will get taken away.
So what now?
I have to make up for, you know, absent mummy for the next few years, I think. But when they're at school, I'd love to put down my thoughts. I'd love to cook all the new recipes I'd been interested in.
Yeah.
Travel, embrace nature, start a garden. Just every time I look at the sky, I can't believe I can look, you know, it's 360-degree view as opposed to just a little slit up the top of the cell.
Did you do the school run last week?
I did.
Yeah? What was that like?
Felt so good. Yeah. I saw one of my son's friends call out to him as he came, and I saw the lollipop man, who was very friendly, and just this whole idea that I am now here for them, and meeting my daughter's teachers, who were so sweet. Yeah. They had been praying for me, and I even met one of the teacher's dogs who my daughter had written about in her letters, because they were, I mean, family letters are like medication. Yeah. And when you get them, it's a huge boost to the immune system, to everything. Yeah. And when you don't, or when you get them really late, you feel like a patient who needs to go to dialysis and is missing that treatment. So they are so important to people who are detained. I was euphoric when I spoke to the embassy guys, and just thanking them and wanting to sing, because words really fail the amount of gratitude I feel for everyone who has believed me and supported me. You know, I work with words and I trust words, but words are useless.
What did you sing when you said you sang for joy? Was there a particular song, or was it just...
I said I feel like one phrase perhaps says it better, which is in the first verse of Amazing Grace. It's a song that's very special because it helped me and my cellmates a lot. We may not have the best voices, but when we were softly singing, because singing is actually against the rules and you want to be careful not to be heard, but that song just soothes so much and gives you hope and courage.